Right, let's just have it right. If you want to talk about Liverpool having trends in their football, then let's talk about some of those trends in the football and the way that pre-season and everything else in these 4 opening games of the Premier League season, everyone seems to think define Liverpool at this point, what it is that is actually happening in Liverpool's football right now, and what can we actually draw from that? Because frankly, I'm quite bored of watching other people's analysis, A, who haven't watched a whole game of Liverpool, and B, who have kind of an agenda to push against Liverpool and against whatever it is that Liverpool are meant to be this season. Because let's be honest, right? We can define a lot of other managers' football relatively simply, even though it isn't that simple. But we can say Mikel Arteta is a slightly more conservative manager. He is a manager who's going to put defence first and then rely on a lot of trained and pre-decided ideas and counter-attacks and constructed attacks which are going to get Arsenal ahead. And it's worked very well for them. But, you know, at this point in the season, there probably will be a discussion, especially among the Arsenal fan base, around whether they are over-reliant on set pieces and why they are reliant on set pieces in the way that they are. Not that that's a bad thing. Again, it can be used as a stick to beat someone or it can be used as a positive. Pep Guardiola, very attacking with Pep Lingers by his side, but also we know that there are fallibility areas in their kind of games. And we know that people who choose to pick off some of those fallible elements of a Man City side will get ahead of them. We can't judge them on playing Manchester United. We can judge them on playing decent sides. And we will see them play decent sides in the next couple of weeks. We've also seen them play a couple of decent teams. And let's be honest, City haven't always fared that well. Maresca and Chelsea, slightly more conservative, but again, quite pretty football. There's a lot of openness to the creativity of that front line. But at the same time, they are open at times to some of the things that happened against Brentford. Liverpool in pre-season, and again, there's other people. We talk about Amorim, we talk about but there's no point in defining Amorim right now. There's no point in defining some of those other managers. Eddie Howe has got a very compelling style of football. It's more blood and thunder. It seems a lot more towards the Jurgen Klopp end of the spectrum. But again, slightly fallible. There are elements to it which you can pick apart. And of course, every team is going to have a soft underbelly. Every team is going to have an Achilles heel. And I think there are times where people think that because you find a fault once with the side, that is always then their Achilles heel. That is always the problem. I don't think that's necessarily the case with Liverpool. So let's take a look at these fixtures, the 4 Premier League fixtures that we've had so far this season that people seem to be defining in Liverpool's entire season from, despite the fact they've not introduced Alexander-Isak, despite the fact that we are still bedding Wirtz in, despite the fact that we've been without a right back and we've had Szoboszlai playing there, despite the fact that we've got a new left back in there, despite the fact that we are beginning to bed new players in like Ekitike, and a lot of people said this amount of change, they won't be able to cope. Those arguments have suddenly gone to one side, and suddenly it's about Liverpool being this, and again, it's preconception, all-out attacking side, and we have to be all-out attacking against Burnley and everyone else. And when we are all-out attacking, people then have a go at us because we get counter-attacked a lot. So which one is it? Do people want Liverpool to be all-out attack and just pure entertainment because of the amount of money spent this summer? Or do they want Liverpool to be a champion who go around and win things? Which I think a lot of people would like it to be both, because then they can critique and then they can obviously pick apart things. But at the same time, the time when I think we have been most open, which was probably Crystal Palace, frankly, and then also probably Newcastle. Bournemouth, I think we're open, but in different ways. We have been picked apart and we have left ourselves open. And I think the players have learned lessons from those moments. So let's go through some of these games. Let's first of all talk about the Crystal Palace game, right? Worked as a pretty competitive pre-season. If you look at Liverpool's lineup, then that is pretty similar to the team that we end up starting, apart from the fact that Szoboszlai is now playing right back. You could make the argument McAllister wasn't probably back then, and we didn't have a holding midfielder in Gravenberch. But apart from that, I think overall the rest of the shape was beginning to get there. And actually, it wasn't all that bad of a game for us. Ekitike scored a really good goal early on. They obviously got their penalty. We then had Frimpong in... it was very, very early on Ekitike, and then it was Frimpong in the 20th minute. They've got it listed here as the 21st, but I'm pretty sure it was the 20th minute. And then they went on to get their penalty and obviously win the game on penalties. That is different to a Premier League win. We would have just got a draw out of that in the Premier League, and possibly we would have tried to change the situation if we were in the Premier League. But we'll take it, all right? Palace were very good on that day, and I think they were very motivated. An unusual outlier of a game, you could argue, for us. These are all of our pre-seasons here. I think it's worth just taking a quick look at them. Pretty dominant against Athletic Club twice. Yokohama, obviously, we're pretty dominant against them. Even then, we kind of had to be more patient to win our way into it. Milan actually won a game against us. Again, we played quite open, but also if you look at those starting lineups, you've got this pretty much the first game that we played. What was the other one we played? We played Preston. Alisson, Stevenson, Gravenberch, Van Dijk, Robertson. That was pretty much a makeshift back line, even with some experienced players. Soboslai, Morton in midfield. Morton, of course, going to end on brilliant things with Lyon, but I think, again, very different kind of league, very different kind of time in there. He wouldn't get that kind of time in the Premier League. Harvey Elliott playing the 10. Wirtz kind of also playing like a weird inside... No, I can't see the... Oh, I can see the average positions. There we go. So Wirtz playing that inside 10. Harvey playing much more of like an 8, but kind of similar to the way we played Villa last year. And then 2 wingers in Rio Gamoa and Mo Salah. Now we're going to move into the Preston. I'm not going to talk about that. That really was a warm-up fitness game. Let's move into the Premier League season, right? And a lot of people are levelling a very simple accusation at Liverpool. Liverpool only win late. Interesting, because very often we try to take the full 90 minutes in, and equally, football is played over 90 minutes for a reason. It's a marathon, not a sprint, though some people try to turn that marathon into a sprint, and very often we try to vary the tempo of a game, manage the tempo of a game, manage what the opposition are doing in order to bait them into sprinting at us or making it into a bit of a boxing match. We keep them on the end of that jab, we work out when we're going to move inside. Let's take a look at it though, okay? Let's take a look at the fact that Liverpool won 4-2 at Anfield the opening day of the season. We went 2-0 up. Let me just go for that. Yeah, we went 2-0 up, 1 goal first half, so 3 goals in the second, but 1 goal either side of half-time, basically. Semenyo then with 2 fantastic counter-attacks, as you can see here in the counter-attacking bar. And then late on, Liverpool were just pushing. And despite the fact that I think Bournemouth did play their way into the game and Iraola did work out a lot of what Liverpool were doing and where our vulnerabilities were on those days, you can see Liverpool still managed a majority of this game and minimised what it was that Bournemouth were trying to achieve. Again, should we go and look up some shapes? Let's take a look at some of these. Yeah, there we go. Average positions, you see Wirtz in the middle, you see Ekitike also looking quite deep. We weren't quite as progressed, I think, attacking-wise as we want to be, but I actually felt pretty confident after that game. I felt pretty good about it. I felt that Liverpool were moving in the right direction, especially after I've been watching them against Palace and then watching them against Bournemouth. I felt there was some progression there. There was a bit of attacking cohesion. And the same, by the way, goes for the Newcastle game. Scoring 4 goals against Bournemouth and then 3 goals against Newcastle, again, there's another trend that people aren't picking up on. We played 2 games, 2 teams, very openly, in a pretty back and forth style way, and both times we held our own, I'd say, pretty well. I think a lot of people expect it to be 4-0, 5-0, 4-0, 5-0, and they're holding us to what I would consider to be unrealistic standards, just purely to find a way to have a go at Liverpool. But let's take a look at it, all right? Again, look at this, what would you call it? It's like an attacking momentum. This graph illustrates the intensity of pressure. Liverpool, in the first half, was pretty even with Newcastle. We're away from home. You kind of got to expect that, right? But at the same time, Newcastle obviously had their agenda. They wanted people to get on Liverpool's back. You would argue that Liverpool's goal changed the game, and I think it certainly felt as if we swung away from Newcastle really trying to bring on the front foot and bring in that Eddie Howe intensity that obviously looks very different in contrast to the way that Liverpool play. But we managed it, and we went down the other end. And if we go back to the start, you remember basically it was Ryan Gravenberch just perfectly picking out the corner, and it trickled past the goalkeeper pretty much. Anthony Gordon then gets fouled late on, changes the game a little bit, but actually the intensity of Newcastle stays there. You can see there are some annoyed Newcastle players. And when Liverpool come out and basically in the second half just pick off Newcastle instantly, then you were thinking, right, now they're going to manage this game to a very dry conclusion. But Newcastle had other ideas. And again, I think we allowed them back in. But that's the narrative of the first 2 games. We allowed Newcastle and Bournemouth into both of these games. We get that goal late on with Rio Gamoa, a good sign as far as I'm concerned. And again, right up to the very last minute, but we played it really well. And it was great tactical adjustments from Slot, which made a big difference for us. I think that's something that's going massively under the radar, are these tactical adjustments and how Liverpool are kind of feeling out the opposition. We are working out where people are going to be in this space, how we're going to play off each other. Even Mo Salah and Arne Slot called it out post-game when Mo was talking about, well, we've been trying to integrate Isak this week, and Alex, as he called him. But that's not there yet. He's not fully fit, and we can't play him for those full 90. And then Slot was also calling out, we're still getting to know some of these attacking trends, some of these attacking ideas, and we're working our way into it. cool, good with me. Arsenal came to Anfield and basically came to be very defensive and then counter-attack on us. We were also kind of feeling them out. Very often part of our tactic is to draw the opposition onto us. And if they don't draw onto us in the way that we want them to, we're just going to keep the ball. We're not going to allow ourselves to be open to risk, especially against a great attacking side like Arsenal, who, by the way, if you look at that Arsenal starting lineup, it was not as if they lacked any attacking edge. Their Gucker is in there. Their £60 million striker, Zubimendi, Marino, Rice, a really controlling midfield. Martinelli, Madueke. Madueke, they've just spent 60 million on. Martinelli, he's been a talent of that club, very bedded in at this point. Calafiori, an extremely attacking left back. Timber, a more balanced right back, but you'd argue still pretty good attacking, really solid at back. They came and they sat in. And you can see here from the progression, look at that. Like, Arsenal had the better of that first half because they were just sitting and then trying to pick us off. It's a great way of playing us. But again, go down to the average positions and you'll see that's a pretty balanced team for Arsenal. Sorry, that's a pretty balanced team for Liverpool. That is pretty much a much more conservative Arsenal side, with then Madueke just being the outlier. They were attacking Kirkes on that side. That was where their attacking momentum came from. It's not as if it was some sustained attacking momentum for long periods of the game. And it's not as if Arsenal were by far the superior side. Liverpool were playing a very conservative side who were away from home and sat a lot deeper against us. I think that's fair enough. And then let's go on to this Burnley game. First of all, the attacking momentum chart is insane. I'm not going to base all of my argument on attacking momentum and XG and those kind of things. I think if you watch the game, you'll have been frustrated by the fact that Liverpool, there were times where they looked a little bit like they lacked some creative flair, but they didn't lack attacking ideas. Attacking ideas and creative flair are two different things. And thinking that you've got to integrate all these flicks and round the corner things and all these like little moments that are going to really get us off our seat in order to win every game, I think first of all, it's disingenuous. I think secondly, it's kind of a way of hamstringing aside by saying you need to entertain us in all of this. And yes, I do think football should be entertaining, but I think 4 games into a season, immediately after an international break, where your starting 11, let's just go through the starting 11 here, guys. Alisson away with Brazil, Szoboszlai away with Hungary, Kirkes away with Hungary, Van Dijk away with the Dutch side, Konate, I think was away with France, Gravenberch away with the Dutch side, McAllister away with Argentinians, Wirtz away with Germany, Gakpo away with the Dutch side, Salah away with Egypt, Ekitike away with France. Was Ekitike called to France? Robertson away with Scotland, Bradley away with Northern Ireland, Chiesa, did he get a call up to Italian side? Frimpong, obviously, and Rion Gamoa. I think he played in the England under-19s, under-21s, right? So all of those players were not there for training in the week before that and got off literally to, I think, about 2 or 3 training sessions before they played this Burnley team. I would also argue that with Atletico Madrid, it is Atletico Madrid, yeah, Atletico Madrid coming to Anfield in the coming days, there will also have been half an eye on that and knowing we just got to get through this game and then get to Anfield on the Wednesday, also knowing that 3 days after that, Saturday at 12:30, we then have Everton. Come on, guys. What is it that you want Arne Slot to do here? Do you want him to instantly have this side clicking? Because relatively early on last season, we had a lot of that clicking. There were a lot of players who were very highly motivated, enjoying some of these new techniques, enjoying some of these new ideas, people who were very on the front foot to impress the manager. They're still very on the front foot to impress the manager. Wirtz is still bedding in. I would say it's the opposite of what a lot of people are saying right now. Liverpool have got results. They're talking about trends. Let's look at the trend that the Premier League charts. The trend that the Premier League shows is that Liverpool won 4 out of 4 games. Now, I'm not saying that Liverpool don't have weaknesses and there aren't moments where we look vulnerable, but there wasn't one moment where we looked vulnerable against Burnley. I would say there was like 1 or 2 moments where they barely ventured into our box, and the rest of the game we absolutely dominated them. Arsenal were talking about their XG. We both had pretty low XG in that game, and I think, again, you could talk about Liverpool maybe looking frustrated, but we were playing 2 teams who were either in a mid-block or a low block. Arsenal's low block, transitioning to a mid-block, was then an outball to Madueke. And again, I'd focus on Liverpool's fullbacks. That's a smart place to focus your attention. But don't tell me then that you're coming to Anfield being all out attack. And frankly, an approach which has been gifted against other sides and against Newcastle, Crystal Palace and Bournemouth. And then tell me that being conservative is the way to go. Arsenal got as close to a win as Newcastle got. Arsenal got as close to a win as Bournemouth got. They got as close to a win as Crystal Palace got. And then the same probably goes, by the way, we only beat Burnley 1-0. So if you're just going to judge things on surface, then sure, that's absolutely fine. But what I see is a Liverpool side who are working up a synergy between each other, waiting for a striker to come in. Like, Ekitike is obviously fantastic. I think he's an amazing striker in the first place, but a very different style of striker to come in, who we've been training with this week, who've been working into the team, and we are working out where we're going to play them. And also working out what they do with a right back of Szoboszlai, working out what we do with the new shape that we have. It is a very different shape to where we were before. I think it's just worth calling all these things out. A lot of people getting on Liverpool's back and saying, oh, well, this Liverpool side reliant on Salah. Salah was flat again. Yeah, but Salah was there for the clutch moment. And if people want to talk about it being ideologically perfect, I frankly think that football has moved on a bit since then. Football is moving on from being just an ideology, and it's much more moving on to this game management idea that Slot and everyone else is currently leaning into. So, yes, I think Liverpool have got some fallibility. I think any side in the Premier League this season who plays is going to be fallible in some capacity. There's not one side in the Premier League, especially if we look at the standings, who isn't fallible right now. In fact, Liverpool, they've got their own fallibilities. They've conceded 4 goals. Arsenal only conceded 1, but they've also lost a game. And the one that they conceded was the game that they lost because of their conservatism in that game. They've also played Manchester United, a team who sit in the bottom half of the table, Leeds, a team who sit bottom half of the table, and Nottingham Forest, and this is the Europa League now, standings, there we go. So Arsenal have played Leeds 16th, Forest 15th, Manchester United 14th. Liverpool have played Newcastle, who are 10th, Arsenal, who are 2nd. Who are we playing on the weekend? Burnley, who are 17th, sure, beat them. And then opening the other season with Bournemouth, who are currently 4th, by the way. So we've played 2 sides in the top 4, and currently, obviously, it's not very different. 3 sides in the top 10, and Arsenal have played all of their other opposition, apart from Liverpool, outside of the top 12. I would argue, guys, that scoring late goals is not the idea here. Scoring the goal is the important thing. Having the repeatable system, having a manager that you have faith in to repeat that system. We're currently talking about Ruben Amorim and the fact that players don't have faith in his system. We were talking about the players questioning what Pep Guardiola was doing a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about players questioning whether Arteta is that man a couple of weeks ago. This Liverpool side has absolute faith in what it is that Arne Slot is doing right now. And there are multiple people out there who are just making pithy arguments and going, look at the late goals. Yeah, but look at the rest of the goals. We were in positions to score those late goals because we played so consistently for the rest of the game. We had a repeatable system and we're slowly picking the opposition off. It's not going to be that way for the whole season. And if it is, I'll be very surprised. But if you're only just waking up to the fact now that Arne Slot changes things late and gives Liverpool different missions later on, and that from 80-minute onwards, you're the one sleeping on us. We're not sleeping on you. So I just find it very unusual at this point that Liverpool are being critiqued whilst being top of the league and still haven't bedded in the striker they spent the most money on and a, frankly, record transfer this summer that we've wrangled for. We are talking about Mo Salah misfiring. We're talking about Wirtz not even being up to standard. A lot of people are speaking about that. Bedding in 2 new fullbacks, losing Trent Alexander-Arnold. There are lots of narratives here that people are just blatantly ignoring, frankly. And I look forward to your reply. I'm sure there are people who have got critiques in the comments below. I have my own critiques. Not impressed with Konate on multiple different games now, but more impressed as he's grown into the season. Frimpong falls over way too much, but wins the ball back very high up the field. Wirtz doesn't seem to be able to hold on to the ball because of the physicality of the league. He's growing into that and winning the ball back. He's certainly very good. Dominic Szoboszlai, fantastic. I can't really find a critique for him, but playing him at right back, so far it's getting the very good results out of him. But is it the position that we long-term see him in? How are we going to please the whole midfield? Kirk is on the other side, wide open against a couple of different players, and again, taken off on the weekend. These are all legitimate arguments that Liverpool have vulnerabilities, and I'm more than willing to approach those. But let's not pretend that the vulnerability here is scoring late goals. Having the ability to repeat a system and having the belief in a manager is a virtue. It is not a sin. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'd love to know what you think. Of course, if you want to be consistent on where you're at with the channel, then subscribe. And if you want to, you can join the membership. A much better share of it goes to us over on the Patreon. And of course, down below, there is a completely free chat area where you can go and chat down there. But there is also a free Discord if you want to go and get in there. Super chat if you want to. And I will see you guys in the next video. I appreciate you watching. Appreciate you being part of the community. And I'll see you in a little while. Much love. Bye-bye.